to be here with Cheryl and Sue and Elizabeth and all of you. So thank you all for coming. Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of a religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at all HPH meetings is voluntary. All discussions that take place at affiliate-led meetings are confidential. We hope that participants will learn from and share from each other. Zoom meetings run by HPH leaderships are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of HPH meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members. So we ask that you take away from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally.
Thank you, Lynn. So before I read a little bit about Sue, I will ask anyone if you want to say hello in the chat box. Let us know if you're an affiliate leader, caring listener, board member. Okay. The Sacred Numerology workbook, created by Reverend Sue Frederick, master numerologist and ordained unity minister, illustrates how to calculate your birth path, soul agreements, name, number, Pinnacle Cycles, personal year reinvention cycles, Saturn Returns, and more. Reverend Sue gives an overview of the meaning of each number and how to use her unique system to understand what your soul came here to do, how to navigate reinvention cycles, connect to our departed loved ones, and fulfill your true purpose. Reverend Sue is the author of several books that teach numerology, including I See Your Dream Job, I See Your Soulmate, Bridges to Heaven, and Through a Divine Lens. Numerology offers a divine perspective on our human journeys. It answers the questions, why am I here? What is my purpose, and how does that relate to my work? Why am I facing grief and heartbreak? What lesson is my soul trying to learn for highest good? How can I move more gracefully through the cycles of life without resisting what my soul came to experience? How can I love and forgive the people whom have wounded me? Reverend Sue Frederick has helped thousands of clients across this wisdom from the numbers to address their deepest pain and move forward. She has studied and practiced numerology since 1980 when her young husband died of cancer. Numerology answered all of her questions and helped her navigate her life and work for 40 plus years. She's trained hundreds of coaches to use numerology to guide clients. Her books all include numerology. I See Your Dream Job, I See Your Soulmate, Bridges to Heaven, and Through a Divine Lens. Lifelong intuitive, author, ordained unity minister, master numerologist, and soul regression therapist, Reverend Sue Frederick has been featured in the New York Times, CNN, and has presented workshops at venues such as Omega Institute, Kripalu Retreat Center, hopefully I said that properly, the Crossings Retreat Center, Naropa University, Shambhala Retreat Center, Loyola University, Unity of Phoenix, and Unity of Boulder. She's the author of 8 books addressing spirituality, life purpose, numerology, and connecting to departed loved ones. So we are very excited to have her. Here is Sue's numerology. It's called Sacred Numerology Workbook. It's on Amazon. So she's going to be talking about it today. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Carol. I'm truly embarrassed now that you read that whole thing. Like that, just hi. I'm just here, glad, happy to be here with everybody. So I'm just thrilled to talk about numerology with all of you because, as many of you know, because I've worked with you and clients, as clients, numerology really gives us a whole new, a soul's perspective on the losses that we may be going through, the reinvention points we may have hit, our soul agreements, especially with our departed. And finally, I mean, I've written all these other books where numerology was like tucked into it, but it wasn't the focus. And so finally I was like, duh, I need to just make a workbook so that if people just want to go through it and calculate all their calculations at once, they can do it without having to read a whole book. So that's what the workbook is for. And I've heard from my friends that it's user-friendly enough that any math idiot can do it. And I'm a math idiot. So hopefully it'll work for all you guys.
Well, ever since I met you, I'm always calculating everybody's numbers. So what actually got you interested in numerology?
Well, just like you said, it was when my husband died. I was 29 and I had never been, I'd been interested in astrology and theosophy and all kinds of out there things, but numerology hadn't really crossed my focus. And when I was grieving my young husband, and he had suffered a lot, he died of colon cancer and he was so young and beautiful. We were mountain climbers. We were so fit. And so watching him suffer like that for a year, I was angry at the universe. Like, why did beautiful, loving people why does anybody have to suffer? That was my question. And also, why am I still here? I'm sure that many of you have asked that question when you lose a loved one, even when we know that they're doing okay in spirit, because they come back and tell us that in so many ways. We all still have that question of, okay, well then why can't I just go be with them? Like, I don't need to be here anymore. And suddenly this numerologist sat down in front of me and showed me my path, my soul mission, Paul's path, what our agreement was, where I was in my own reinvention cycles. And she basically said to me in an hour, you signed up for this and you have some important work to do in the world. So, buck up and let's get the work done. And that really felt true to me. It really resonated with my heart. And I always say that 1 hour with the numerologist changed my life forever. And I became obsessed with learning more about it.
So after 40 years of working as a numerologist, what would you say is your greatest insight for us as souls on this journey? Your greatest takeaway?
I think it's really helpful in realizing, having that aha moment. Wow, this wasn't a random tragedy. This was somehow in my life plan. And the way numerology lays that out are, where you are in your reinvention cycles, the path that your departed was on, your path, the lesson in that soul agreement number between the two of you. And when somebody with a lot of insight helps you walk through that and really understand it, then suddenly you're like, oh, so, I don't need to spend so much energy and time being angry or maybe trying to blame somebody or, being in my darkest moments. I can begin to start seeking a wisdom way of looking at this so that when my departed is looking at me, and watching me, they can see that I'm trying to learn how to move forward, that I'm trying to do the great mission, the soul mission I came here to accomplish, even when I'm devastated by grief. And so many of you moms that I have worked with, you know, you have been utterly shattered and utterly devastated. And then that little bit of light comes through about how you're supposed to move forward and what you're here to do, which numerology really addresses. And it helps you begin to get out of bed in the morning and begin to see it differently and ask different questions.
Will you explain a little bit about how this workbook helps us to understand and work with our personal soul missions and reinvention cycles?
Well, the first calculation in the workbook is your soul mission. And if you don't do any of the others, you know, that's fine, but start with the soul mission, because it'll tell you, it'll explain so much to you about, you know, for example, I'm a 22-4 path, and I know that some of you other moms are as well. And, you know, that means we're always here to work, and that even when we're devastated with heartbreak, you know, we're supposed to be writing books and teaching classes and just getting on with it and helping other people and using our pain as fuel to help other people. And that's just one example. I mean, I've always joked with Elizabeth and other people that I really wish I'd picked a 5 birth path instead of a 22-4, because the 5 is like Elizabeth Boissant, our incredible, fearless leader here, who shines the brightest light, who even through devastating loss, her job is to be the lighthouse, to shine the light for the rest of us might be lost at sea. Her love, her light, her positivity, her organization she started is all stellar in alignment with the highest expression of her path as a 5 path. So when you look at your work that way, it really sheds a lot of light on, am I doing the right work? Or am I going to a job all day that's depressing me even more? And how do I go about changing my work perhaps so that it is in alignment with my soul mission, my soul path?
Thank you. And you've already said you don't have to be good at math, but would you say, do you have to like numbers? Does that even matter?
You know, I didn't even like numbers when my friend gave me the reading of numerology. Like, I'm a writer, and I started out writing when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was writing murder mysteries for my girlfriends like Nancy Drew, you know, in school. And from there was always writing books. And so math was my struggle place, really. You know, my poor father was an engineer, and he spent countless hours trying to teach me math for school, and it was just so hard for me. So if I can do this and understand it and really grasp these deeper spiritual meanings of numbers, then anyone can do it. And the good news is, every calculation is very simple. And that's how I've laid it out in the workbook, so that you can just see, okay, well, maybe today I just want to look at my personal year reinvention cycles. And you can turn to that page and go through that and do that. And at the end of the book, I wanted to make it so that whatever path you're on, you can go through and mark out your whole life, starting with the year you were born all the way up until now. And you'll begin to see these patterns, like you're doing a soul review at the end of life, when we get to look at our life and go, oh, wow, all those little hard moments, those reinvention points were my biggest growth points. And I really evolved a lot in those moments. And we see that bigger picture of our life story, and we realize that, wow, I accomplished what I came to accomplish. That's really what you can see in those personal year charts. So I hope that tonight, when you figure out your path, you know, you can go and figure out your personal year cycles, and then really review them as if it's a soul review, and say, look how I handled that reinvention. I was kicking and screaming the whole way, but I still had to go through the reinvention. What can I learn from that? If you're stubborn like me, the numbers really helped me because I would always argue with the universe, like, no, I don't want to do that. This doesn't seem, it's not fair or whatever. And finally, when I began to see, no, that's the end of a cycle, and I need to surrender what I have to let go of and kick up to the new next phase, because that's going to be exactly right for me and even better in fulfilling my learning and what I came here to do. And those reinvention cycles really help you with that, so that when you hit a 9-year, an ending, and the world seems like it's falling apart, you get that larger soul perspective and go, oh, this is just the end of a cycle. It'll all be new, better, and different on the other side of this ending. And that's, to me, one of the greatest gifts of numerology.
It's interesting that you say that, because when I met you and I started learning about this, I went back and calculated the year that my son passed away and what year I was in. And it was 7, which is the year of spirituality, awakening.
Right.
And I had never believed in anything. So it's really fun to do. Do you want to explain, before we move on to the next question, a little bit about what, like you said, year 9, we have, I know it's year 1 to 9. Do you want to briefly explain, so people that maybe have just jumped on understand a little bit about what you mean by your year and following?
Yes. So if you're in a 1 personal year, it's the beginning of a new cycle. It's like planting seeds in the garden in the spring. You're just trying to get some new ideas moving forward, maybe new work that you want to do, or new relationships, or new phases of your inner growth. And then when you're in a 2 personal year or an 11-2 personal year, you're connected to people. They're helping you in this new cycle. 11 is a very sacred, intuitive connection number. So if you're single, you may fall in love in an 11 personal year, but you'll also be very organized, because that 2 is all about order. You'll be putting order to your life in the 2. And then the 3 year comes along, and it's all about creativity and being social and being with people and playing and expressing yourself. And then the 4 personal year comes along, and it's back to work. You have a big project to accomplish. If you're at a job, you might suddenly get promoted or handed all kinds of new responsibilities. Or if you're at home, suddenly you might have decided to move, and so you're packing and you're doing hard work all year, or even physical hard work, like getting back in shape, that energy of the 4. And if it's a 22-4 personal year for you, you'll also be thinking, gosh, I really want to teach and help others with these new things I'm learning. And you'll start looking to write a book maybe, or do something like that, or teach workshops and classes. And then if it's a 5 personal year, pretend that you're Elizabeth and feel shiny, beautiful, and travel the world and enjoy your life, but be fearless, because in a 5 personal year, it's all about being courageous. And then in a 6 personal year, it's turning towards your family, your loved ones, your health, your healing, your heart. And so you may be healing relationships with family members, or even taking care of a family member, or falling in love if you're single, or having a baby. It's all that home and heart stuff. And then the 7 personal year, just like Carol said, it's a year of turning inward and really growing spiritually, enhancing and trusting your intuition, asking those important questions about, is there a God, or how do I view God, or where did my people go when they crossed over? All of those spiritual questions are perfect for a 7 personal year. And then an 8 personal year comes along, and you're out in the world having to deal with money and power and career, and either you're suddenly getting your finances in order because they are not in a good place, or if they've been in a good place, then you're reaping the benefit of that vibration of 8, which is money and power. And again, using that for highest good, though. That's always the secret. Every number, you have to lean into the positive end of it as much as possible. So an 8 could be abusive and greedy, or it could be empowering self and others with finances and in other ways. And then you hit the 9 personal year, and the universe is going, all right, you are complete with this 9-year set of lessons. So now start surrendering what holds you back, start letting go of limited ideas and limited relationships, and opening up to the new. It's like cleaning out your closet so you have room for the new. And it's also a culmination year. Everything you've learned and studied and practiced up until now, you are now putting together and using in your life in that 9 personal year. And then you let it go and it flips over into a whole new cycle. But it's never like starting over again. It's like, oh, wow, now this is different. This is taking me somewhere new and exciting. It's like each cycle brings you up to a new level of growth and awareness. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And in your opinion, I mean, every year has, lessons. Is there a year, not to scare anyone, but a year that's a little more challenging that you would say
Yeah. Well,
that we might
I'll
be
preface
prepared
that
for
by
it?
saying whatever your path is, like, so for example, Carol, your path is the 9, you're on the 9 path for your whole life. So that would mean that a 9 personal year for you is really going to be a good year in lots of ways, because you're really feeling the essence of your journey, and that whole idea of letting go what you don't need, that won't be so hard for you because you've been on the 9 path your whole life. So you understand these deeper lessons. Whereas somebody like me who's on a 22/4 path or something, when I hit a 9 year, I just want to fight with the world and hold on to things the way they are, And so for me, a 9 personal year is always a challenge, even though now that I know about numbers, I try so hard to go with the flow, but it's always like more than I was hoping would have to change. Like my last 9 year, my husband was suddenly diagnosed with prostate cancer, and the only doctor who said they could help us was here in Phoenix. And so we sold our 40-year home and family home in Boulder, Colorado, and came here with not knowing anybody. And that 9 year was very hard. And then suddenly I'm here. And who do I make friends with? You guys should be so jealous of me if you don't live in Arizona. I got to make friends with Carol, Lynn, Elizabeth, and the HPH moms. And they are the greatest people in the world to me, because grief is our greatest teacher. So if you've had your heart broken open with grief, you are an evolved soul, and it is my honor to know you. So now I'm in a new cycle, and I have these new friends and this new purpose, and it's magnificent when we look at these cycles from the distance and really see how they're always getting us to a new and better place.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you explained that each of us, that year is different for each of us, which is why it's so important for us to calculate our own numbers and go through the workbook, because it does make a difference. How would you say that we should embrace a challenging year to help us get through it?
It's spiritual inner work. I teach everybody we should be meditating every day, because our greatest ally is our soul's wisdom, our intuition, and we all have that pure channel. And our greatest obstacle is the monkey mind that's always going to be worrying and filling us with anxiety and fear, and even blocking our communication to our children sometimes, just because it makes us cynical. Like, okay, we might see the biggest sign on earth, and then the cynical mind will come in and go, oh, that's a coincidence or something. But when we meditate, we are intentionally quieting that worry mind, that human mind, and intentionally open up our connection to the divine for guidance and for wisdom. So if you don't have time to meditate, and I have lots of videos on my website you can go watch about meditation, but if you just can't do it, then try at least when you feel that you're struggling, just literally close your eyes, just look up, open your heart, open your hands, and say, please, divine guides and departed loved ones, please lift me above this difficult moment. Please fill my heart with love and wisdom and understanding. Please show me the way forward. That prayer is always answered, and it is answered immediately because you are surrounded by loved ones and guides and spirits and angels and God consciousness who all have your back, because this is an all good, all God universe. And it's all working in all of our favor to help us evolve. We're evolving collectively raising the consciousness, the vibration of humanity. So the minute we call out for help and guidance, it comes pouring through. And the more you do it, the more you realize you're never alone. The only time is you think you are when you have your head down, looking at the details of life, and you're angry or frustrated or feeling all alone. That's when the mind is making you crazy. Then you take that deep breath. You lift up your head, your heart, and ask for help, and bingo, you are going to get incredible ideas suddenly, different vibrational energy suddenly. Somebody might call you. It's just so magical that I wish everyone could remember that in the moment of their greatest pain.
Thank you. And we've had a few people ask, and we'll talk briefly. We'll have Sue talk briefly about how to calculate based on your birthday, what life path you're on. And then of course, the workbook will help guide you through, because there is a lot of information, but guide you through based on your birthday, what personal year you're in. So how would you say that your approach, the sacred numerology, is different than other approach?
Well, that's such a good question, because I've been doing it so long, I'd kind of forgotten that I do it so differently from other people. And last week, someone was interviewing me about this sacred numerology workbook. And as I went through to answer that question, I was thinking, wow, in my, 40 years of working with numbers, I really have created a very unique system. And I guess the way I would say that is I would say, I see these numbers as gateways to understanding our life path, our plan, our life plan, what we agreed to when we were in spirit and agreed to with our loved ones, even the ones who cross over early or break our hearts. We agreed to all of this on our life plan for highest good, not ever for punishment. And when we look at the numbers properly from that depth of our soul's wisdom, we get these extraordinary insights that really can change us forever. So if you read any of my descriptions of the numbers, or why do we choose a certain path, it's because our soul chose it, and not every numerology people talk about that. In other words, it's not some random thing that your birthday happens to land on this date, and so you happen to be on this path. That's just irritates me when numerologists talk like that, because the way I see it is the soul is always in charge. We are divine beings. We come here on purpose with a plan, and we asked the universe to give us all these helpful signs while we're here. So we have astrology, numerology, and all kinds of things, cards, angel cards, all these different ways to go, oh yeah, now I remember who I am and why I came here. And you can pick whichever of those tools works best for you. Numerology for me, and the way I've created it, I even add in the astrology sun sign, because that influences it, and that's not a normal numerology thing. So for example, Carol, you're on the Scorpio 9 path, which means, of course, you're going to be incredibly intensely beautiful and deep and soulful and loving. All these beautiful things you are, combined with the 9 path of ultimate lessons, ultimate compassion, ultimate wisdom. That's such a beautiful combination, the Scorpio 9, and your soul chose that for your growth. And it's so beautiful. So when you begin to combine these sun signs with your path, and then I always teach my students, put your hand on that when you calculate that, and just quiet your mind and feel it for a moment. And you'll begin to download information for your own path. And if you do that for other loved ones or friends, or in my case, for clients, that's how I work with clients, then suddenly you pull out your pen and you start writing, and you'll get so much guidance. Before every client, I do their chart, I put my hand on it, I meditate, and then I say, please, divine guides, give me the words to say to help this soul move forward. And I start writing. And so I start every session with, and here's what your spirit guide said through me about your path today. And then I turn the folder over, and I've connected to their child through their child's birth path, and had their child write through me. And usually the child writes 3 or 4 pages, and it comes through so quickly. And that part of it is all my system. It's not anywhere you'll ever find another person doing it that way. And that came to me through spirit, because I started working with clients decades ago, and they'd have a departed loved one, and I'd say, give me their date of birth so I can look at your soul agreement. And then before I talk to them, I'd kind of feel into it. And suddenly I realized, wow, to me, that's a big portal to that departed loved one. And I always say I make an intentional date with that departed loved one, where I say, okay, even when I wake up in the morning, I'll go, all right, okay, Ernie, I have a date today with your spirit because we've got to help your mom. And I know this is your path. So why don't you sit with me in my sacred studio, and before your mom comes into the Zoom call, and tell me what your journey was like. And then tell me what you want her to know, what you want to say through me. And they say amazing, specific, validating things that really help me see, yes, you can use the numbers to connect with that beautiful spirit. So all you moms can be doing that on your own. You know, it's something, it's a tool that helps us open that beautiful portal to the divine.
Thank you, Sue. And then someone's asking an interesting question. Is there a difference in how you get to that 9 path?
Yeah.
Because when you add the numbers, 8 and 18 versus 27.
Yeah. So there are, this is why in my method, and this is even in the workbook very clearly explained, I suggest that you should add your birthday 3 different ways. And again, this is another different thing from the way many numerology people do it, where they might say, oh, just add it that one horizontal way. And it's true, if you add it that one way, you'll get the final single digit number correct. But if you add it all 3 ways, you get so much more information about how their path is put together. And like she's saying, yes, there's a difference between the 18 and the 27, but until you add it 3 ways, you can't even begin to explore that. But what I find especially interesting is if your soul picked the path of the 2, the 4, or the 6, it could very well be the master soul path of the 11/2, the 22/4, or the 33/6. But you may miss that completely if you only add your date of birth 1 out of the 3 ways. And so in the workbook, I explain the 3 ways to add it. And then let's just say so many of these departed children were 11 master souls or 33 master souls. And when you go in and see, wow, my child was a 11 master soul, that right there tells you they were so sensitive. I mean, it is so hard for a 11 master soul to spend a long time on Earth, because Earth is such heavy, dense, often negative energy. And these highly evolved souls are angelic beings. They're from the highest realms. And so if they don't stay long, it just means that they went as far as they could here, and they are so much more comfortable and happier in the higher realms, but they're still with us and they're helping us and they're guiding us from there. I'm sorry I'm going off on tangents here, but I just want the moms to know that.
No, I appreciate it. And it is so amazing how when you get to know someone and you find out what their life path is, how it's just so spot on.
And you can have so much fun with it too.
So much fun.
It helps you accept people that you might normally have a little problem with or something. And so you can say, oh, you're just being an 8 path or something, and you can laugh about it. And like even my friend Christy, I don't know if she's on today, she's always kidding me about my workaholic tendencies, and like, oh God, you're such a 4 path. Can't you just get out of the house for a while, And so these paths take away our tendency to maybe feel separate or disconnected from other people or focus on what's wrong with us, when we suddenly see that this is the path we came to learn all of our lessons from and to offer all of our gifts from. Then suddenly, the fact that I work constantly and I'm obsessed with working constantly, it's not like I'm a victim to it. It's like, I didn't even know I was going to write a Sacred Numerology workbook until January, when the thought came to me and I was like, oh my God, I got to do this. And I couldn't sleep until I got it done. That's just my path, and the more we accept that kind of a thing, we can go with the flow of who we are and what we're here to learn and what we're here to share.
Thank you. And I have Sabrina asking if you could explain what 111 Master Soul is.
You mean an 11?
Like a 3-1. Yes. Well, we talked about it being a 3 when it's broken down, but she said 111 Master Soul. Could you please explain?
I'm not sure I understand, because either it's a 3 or it's an 11, but 111.
Well, I think it's a 3.
Oh, I think she's saying 11. Is that what she's saying? Okay.
111, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
So
11. Yeah.
A 11 is, like we just talked about, a very super sensitive, very intuitive, very highly, not really meant to have their feet in the dense realm here. And for example, the difference would be if you're a 22, God, thank God I didn't sign up for that, then you're constantly doing this big work from the time you jump into your lifetime. It's going to be very intense. Mine shows up 2 ways. And I was a hippie in my 20s, so I didn't really get to this big work stuff until I was a little further in my journey. So the intensity level is explained by how many times that Master Soul number shows up in your calculations.
Thank you. And I know that Melissa is saying thank you, so healing, and she's very interested in getting a reading. And I will say that Sue is amazing. Her readings are amazing.
And I'll also say, if your child was a 5 path and they in any way struggled with addiction, that is not something they did wrong. And let me reiterate that. Every 5 path comes in to learn through passion, through their physical body, through their shining light charisma. And addictions, alcohol, food, drugs are not sins. They are simply ways that certain souls may choose to learn and grow and experience. And if we take the judgment out of that and say, my beautiful, open-hearted 5 path child, yes, he experimented with drugs, but he was kind of having his own mystical moment in that by doing that. And when I take my judgment away, he learned exactly what he came to learn in this lifetime, no matter how that looks on the outside or no matter how that is judged by the world.
Thank you.
In fact, I think really the kids who have a short time here due to addiction. I believe personally they're very highly evolved. And once they had a drug in their system that was giving them a mystical experience, even though that doesn't last as you do drugs, that suddenly it becomes a terrible experience, but it starts out being a mystical experience, that they keep pursuing that because their soul is really longing for that experience of being out of the body and in the divine realms, right? And so how can we look at that as a sickness or something to be ashamed of? It is simply the soul's way of learning what they've come to learn.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. You know, at Helping Parents Heal, we're all about connecting and trusting our intuition. What does intuition, numerology, have to do with intuition?
Well, you know, I've done this for so long that, and actually when I was younger and had more energy, I would do a lot of these mini readings like on radio shows and stuff where people would just call in and give me their first name and their date of birth. And I'd quickly calculate it, put my hand on it and go, what it feels like for you is this is where you are. And I could give this quick intuitive numerology reading. I still do that sometimes, but in my older age, I learned how to save my energy a little bit. But what I will say is that anybody who really gets into the numbers, and I've trained a whole lot of coaches to do this, they can quickly calculate a birth path and start feeling into it and feeling the energy of that soul and where they are. And, you know, like I said, it really is, if we use it correctly with the intention of connecting to highest good, it becomes a great opening to divine source.
Thank you. And then there's a question here. Are the numbers ever off? I mean, is there some wiggle room and where you...
No, so that's the fun thing. I promise whoever asked that, if I were doing a session with you, I could show you exactly how it's right on. And, you know, that's the thing. You've got to really know the essence of these numbers. And that's part of my advantage of all these years, is that I've really been able to, I've studied it even with spiritual teachers, and in my dreams, I've had teachers come to me in my sleep and give me more information about each number, and then I would write about it the next day. And when you learn the full dimension of every number, then you can see where anyone is on that continuum. You know, like I work with a lot of people who might say, oh, I'm on the 8 path, but I don't care anything about money and I'm always broke. You know, and so you can say, yes, because the 8 path is what you came to learn about the experience of money and power in the world. And so there's a moment where you have to come back out in the world and sort of master that. That's the lesson that your soul came to bring you in this lifetime. They're never wrong. But the other thing I'll say, if you have questions, is even if you were born, for example, on a date that a doctor put in his calendar because you were delivered by cesarean, it doesn't matter, because your soul was still in charge of picking that date and time, you know, and writing it through his hand on the calendar, because your soul's intention overcomes everything else in the world. It overcomes your parents being late giving birth to you, or you being premature. That means your soul set it up that way for your perfect entry into this lifetime. And so whatever your date of birth is, you have to really look at that as meaningful for your soul's purpose. And also we do name numerology, where if you look at your birth name, even if you've changed your name since then, your birth name, as it was put on the birth certificate, carries a certain vibration that kind of reveals what you're here to learn and who you are. And then if we change the name later, it can change how the world perceives us, and sometimes make it better and easier for us to get along in the world by how our name vibration changes when we change it. So for example, Cher, you know, when you calculate her name and birth and then the name she chose, Cher, it makes you smile to say that name, because it just has such a whole different power and energy of how the world perceives her. And yet the name she was born with is the true energy of the vibration of her soul. So it's so fun, but you have to go into it looking at it really from that soul's perspective, or you might be just arguing, about it or something like, oh no, I can't believe I have an 8 soul agreement with that person, but yes. So how can you empower each other on an 8 soul agreement rather than disempower or overpower each other on an 8 soul agreement? Those are the kinds of questions that numerology opens up for us to help us navigate these hard, dense lives down here on Earth.
So would you say numerology also helps us figure out why we are still here and why
Oh
our
God,
kids,
yes.
our
Yeah.
kids are not?
Yeah.
Or they're here, they're just not physically here.
Yes. Yeah. And even, with Paul, he was on the 5 path like Elizabeth. And I always joke that if a 5 path enters the room, I'm going to fall in love with them immediately. It doesn't matter who they are. It's my great weakness in life, I think. But Paul was on the 5 path, and and so our soul agreement was the number 9, and 9, like we just talked about with you, Carol, it's a number of culmination, of final lessons, of great compassion, of great grace. And it can be a number of surrender and letting go, and when I saw that he came to learn through his body, well, Paul chose a path of intense physical learning. First, he was a mountain climber, a rock climber, and then he had incredible pain in his final year of life. But his soul has shown me that all of that was his way on the 5 path of learning through the body, of burning away negativity, opening his heart completely, because by the time he crossed, he was pure love, just the most amazing, loving, open-hearted soul, even after all that pain and suffering. And so when I looked at that path and saw that helped me so much, and saw that our soul agreement was the 9, and saw that I was still here to do work. All of those pieces, even in our darkest moments of grief, we can come up for air and go, well, let me look at this a little different way and see if it helps me move forward.
Thank you. So on that same note, how does our soul agreement, according to numerology, help us to understand challenging relationships? If you can maybe give an example.
That's one of my favorite parts of the workbook. And, when you go through it, you'll get to calculate your path and your friend's path, and then look at the soul agreement. And quickly, the way you do that is you would take your birth path and add it to the birth path of your loved one, and you get a double-digit number, and then you reduce that to a single-digit number, and that gives you the agreement. And so that means you guys have come together in this lifetime. You've been in a soul posse together in many lifetimes, but this time you came down to, for example, if it's the soul agreement of the number 1, then it means you each came to help each other be unique and to find your individual paths, but perhaps not to merge together completely like a loving relationship. Some husbands and wives do navigate that, but they lead these very independent lives, in parallel and harmony. And that works for those kinds of couples. But then if your soul agreement is the number 11, for example, it means you're going to be very merged with that person, very intuitively connected, and almost too intuitively connected, because if they're mad at you, you'll be able to hear their thoughts and feel it. And then if your soul agreement with them is the number 3, it means you'll feel so playful and creative and ideas with them, but you might have to work to get to your hearts, to open your hearts. And if your soul agreement is the number 4, then you're going to build the world together. You're going to find ways that you really work together well, and you help each other's strengths, and you work hard on your communication and on your relationship, but it's not going to be a vacation, so to speak. And then if your soul agreement is the number 5, then it is a vacation. It's going to be fun and passionate and all about, if you're if you're lovers, it'll be very sensual relationship, but it'll also be about pushing you both to change and be courageous, because 5 is the dynamic number of change and energy and courage. So if you're a 6 soul agreement, you'll build home and family and heart with that person. Even if you just know them through work, you'll feel like they're part of your family. But the lesson will be that you're so in touch with their needs and wants that you don't want to lose yourself in that relationship, because a 6 soul agreement can mean that you just want to give them everything they need and want, and you lose touch with your own center and your own needs. And then if it's a 7 soul agreement, you've come together to explore spiritual ideas, to analyze the world together, and sometimes to be critical together, because 7 in its negative side can be very cynical and critical. And if your soul agreement is the 8, it means either you're going to fight for power to find out who's going to be in charge, or you're going to learn how to bring out the best in each other and empower each other. And again, if it's the 9 soul agreement, ultimate lessons, surrender, ultimate love, ultimate forgiveness, and perhaps it'll have your hardest broken heart grief lesson in it too, if 9 is the soul agreement.
Well,
Is
Melissa
that-
is saying, bless you, this is amazing. So. And
Aw.
Sue is she's absolutely amazing. So would you consider, are there some numbers that are considered good numbers or bad numbers?
Well, in traditional psychology, numerology, I would say yes. You'll hear some numerologists talk about, this bad number or this. If you ever get an email from one of those numerology sites and they go, beware, you have to be careful, this year's got blah, 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 delete, because numbers are all helpful signs. They are not anything bad. They are all signs from this all good, all God universe going, okay, this is the energy that's coming at you. It's about love, family, heart, but be careful that you don't lose yourself in the needs of others. That's the 6. Whereas some people might tell you the 6 is a negative number. I don't buy that. I believe, and I'm a unity minister, and this is what we believe, that this is an all good, all God universe run by a loving God consciousness. There is nothing in this universe that is negative or trying to hurt us. We are all on our soul journeys, and we choose the journey. We choose the relationships. We choose the hard lessons, knowing that we can move through them with love and grace, and that we'll be able to help other people with what we learn. That's the whole purpose of these lives we're living. And numerology is like these little lights going off everywhere to say, oh, okay, here comes an ending of a cycle. Open your heart, open your hands, and surrender, because it's going to be great after this.
Thank you. Angie is asking you if you could talk about, or Roseanne, sorry.
Oh, that's
Roseanne
so
is
good.
asking if you can talk about the first Saturn return and the second.
Yes, is that
return.
my Roseanne Chi, who I've done a reading with? Because we really had some huge aha moments in her Saturn returns. And this is what I love doing with clients, because you hit your first Saturn return at the end of your 20s. And that's usually a big moment of saying, who am I really? Am I the person I grew up thinking I was? And so big things happen to people in those last few years of their 20s. They may change their career. They may go back to school. They may fall in love and decide to start a family. But it's always a momentous time. And for me, that's when my husband died. I was in my late 20s. I thought I had it all figured out. And then my beautiful young mountaineering husband died and sent me on a whole different journey. And so our first Saturn return is that big pinnacle turning point. And then in our late 50s, we hit our second Saturn return. And these are related, because in your first Saturn return, if you really understood the lesson of that moment and you went, wow, I need to kind of redirect my life now, maybe study this or that, or start this kind of business, or head in this direction. And we were able to do that. Then when we hit the second Saturn return in our late 50s, then it's just like a beautiful expansion of that work that we've been doing all along. Like the heat gets turned up in our life and it just gets bigger and better. But if we've resisted, like if we saw what that true dream in our heart was in our late 20s, but we weren't able to fulfill it because maybe we got busy raising kids or something, then the second Saturn return comes along in our late 50s and goes, now's the time for you to step up. And with some clients, like, not to give away any specific information, but I do remember that Roseanne and I looked at her first Saturn return and what that had to do with her religious beliefs and her beautiful daughter, and then her second Saturn return and what that had to do with her changing religious beliefs and her departed daughter. And they were such beautiful syncing up lessons. It's like you can really see the life plan going, all right, here's the lesson. And now you see it again. And now you understand it even better. And you know how to move forward with it.
Thank you, Sue. And I think this question may answer or the next thing I'm going to ask you may answer one of our mom's questions here. Do our kids communicate us, or not just our kids, our loved ones in general, communicate with us through numerology? And how can we understand what they are trying to tell us?
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to study the numbers, because you will notice, and especially when you're grieving, you really notice different numbers showing up over and over. And it means different things according to you and what path you're on and what path your child was on, perhaps, or, you know, what your soul agreement was. And maybe you even had a secret language with your child about certain numbers when they were here. And so those numbers will appear. But what I say is that, you know, for example, if you're on well, let's just pretend you're on the 22 path and suddenly you end up being put in a 22 hotel room, or you're asked to speak on the 22nd date or something, you know, that's a little nod from the divine going, do your great work. You know, that's the 22 vibe and that's your path. Whereas if you are on some, let's just pretend you're on the 4 path, and you suddenly see 11 everywhere. Well, 11 is the number of sensitivity, intuition, connecting to the divine. And it means, hey, come on, look up more. You need to be paying more attention to spirit, more attention to intuition, and less attention to the 4 energy of work and drudgery. So that's why I say you got to really kind of understand these numbers so you can see what that sign is.
Thank you so much, Sue. We're almost out of time. Again, Sue's book, Sacred Numerology, is available on Amazon. It's just all of this stuff is just so fascinating. It's fun. It's a lot of fun to play with the numbers. And like I said, I've checked into my entire family, and I'll send my sister a snapshot of, you know, what the 7 path is, what the 9 path is. So it's thank you so much, Sue. It's been so amazing having you here. Do you have any final words?
Yeah, I just hope everybody can dig into it a little bit enough to get some guidance, because the numbers are so friendly, and I made the workbook so user friendly. And even if you just do it as a game before you go to sleep, you know, and look at your child's path and your soul agreement with them and your path, you will have these aha moments. You will begin to start looking at it from that higher perspective. And there's so many ways we can look at things from a higher perspective, you know, and we're so blessed to live in a universe with so many great signs like that. But for all of us, we can go play the numerology game for a while and get some more insight and healing from it. And that's what I wish for all of you sacred parents, just to use the numbers as your gift for connecting to your child and to divine guidance from the highest realms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, Elizabeth is going to ask everyone to unmute so we can say goodbye to our beautiful Sue.
Well,
Thank you,
okay,
Sue.
everybody else can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
Reverend.
everyone.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you,
Thank
Sue.
you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Love
you,
your
Sue.
reading.
Great weekend. Bye, everybody.
Beautiful. Thank
Bye.
you so much.